Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I am back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, I'm trying to lose fat but also build muscle at the same time. Is that actually possible, or do I have to pick one goal first? I'm a firm believer that you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time, but you have to be strategic with your diet and you have to be strategic with your macronutrients. You also have to understand the importance of the micronutrients, the quality of the macronutrients that you're consuming. All right. So a lot of people will tell you that you need to be in a caloric surplus to put on muscle. I would agree with that to an extent. I don't think you need to be in a caloric surplus 7 days a week. I think if you learn how to rotate your macronutrients accordingly, as in some days you're on higher calories versus other days you're on lower calories, I think that's a great way to burn fat and build muscle at the same time. And that's what I do with my clients whose nutritional plans that I design on a weekly basis, where I make weekly and sometimes I make daily revisions to their nutritional plan, depending on where they're at with their physique and their goals. But it really depends on the individual as well that I'm working with, right? So if I'm working with someone who's an endomorph, someone who puts on weight very easily, versus someone who's an ectomorph, someone who loses weight very easily, versus someone who's a mesomorph who puts on muscle and loses fat very easily. So puts on muscle easily, puts on loses fat easily. So once you understand the type of body type that you are, then you can strategically implement a nutritional plan that's going to complement your training program. Okay. So for myself, I've always been a firm believer in when you're putting on muscle, it should just be quality, lean, dense muscle. As in, I don't just want to put on weight. I don't just want to put on water, fat, and muscle. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to make sure that I'm getting my carbohydrates from complex sources. So white rice, brown rice, quinoa, yams, sweet potatoes, oats. I'm going to make sure I get my lean proteins from good quality protein sources. So lean chicken breasts, extra lean ground beef, tilapia, cod. I'm going to make sure I get my healthy fats from good fat sources. So almonds, walnuts, avocados, omega-3 eggs, salmon, olive oil. So I'm making sure that I'm fueling my muscles so that I can perform better in the gym. So I'm going to build solid, lean, dense muscle, but at the same time, because I'm performing at optimal levels in the gym, I'm also going to utilize my time efficiently in the gym. So I'm going to burn fat. All right. So yes, it can be done. You don't need to be in a supreme caloric surplus to put on muscle, nor do you need to be in a severe caloric deficit to lose fat. But if you understand how to rotate your macronutrients on a weekly or sometimes daily basis, you're going to receive optimal results with your physique. You are, okay? So it's not about going in a severe caloric deficit for weeks on end to lose fat, nor is it to go into a caloric surplus for weeks to months on end to put on muscle. Because what's going to happen then is if you're in a caloric surplus for weeks and months on end, you're going to put on muscle, but you're also going to put on fat. And if you're in a severe caloric deficit for weeks to months on end, you're going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose muscle. So you have to be strategic. And again, my recommendation, if you don't understand how to put a diet together that's going to complement your training program and it's going to complement your physique, hire a coach. Okay. It's going to be the best investment and best ROI that you ever make on your health and your physique. All right. Okay. And question two. Nick, if my goal is fat loss, should I still be trying to lift heavier every week, or should I switch to lighter weights and higher reps? Good question. Okay, so lighter weights and higher reps does not equate to more fat loss. Okay, I understand the ideology out there is in higher reps, less rest. You're going to tone muscle. Well, first of all, you can't tone something that's not there. You still need to lift heavy. All right. You still need to keep your reps between 10 to 15, in my opinion, with a heavy weight that you can control on both the eccentric and the concentric phase. I tell this to people who I train for contests all the time. I'm like, your weights shouldn't be going down in the gym when you're dieting. If they are, that means you're losing muscle. Sure, if you're in the last like maybe week before a contest preparation, your carbohydrates are really low and you're starting to reduce your water intake, energy levels are a little bit low, body fat levels are very low. Yeah, I can see your strength going down a little bit. But if you're like 4 or 5 weeks out from a show and your strength is decreasing dramatically overnight, it's a good indicator that you're losing muscle. All right. So you do not want to be losing muscle when you're in a caloric deficit. And that's why it's important, as I mentioned in the last question, to rotate your macronutrients on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. Okay. So one day you're in a caloric surplus, the next day you're in a caloric deficit, maybe 3 days you're in a caloric surplus, and 4 days you're in a caloric deficit. Okay. But to go back to your question, when it comes to fat loss, I would not advise anyone to purposely lift lighter in the gym so that they can fast track fat loss. Okay, that doesn't work. And I understand there's a misconception out there that higher reps, lower weight is going to speed up your metabolism and it's going to speed up the fat loss process. Not true. All right. Zero truth to that. If anything, if you're trying to lose fat and you are in somewhat of a caloric deficit, you should be trying to keep as much muscle as you possibly can by keeping the weights heavy. Okay. So at no time should you be trying to purposely decrease your weights in the gym because you're trying to lose fat. That is a bad idea. Remember, the more muscle you have, okay, remember this, the more muscle that you have, the easier it is to burn fat. So if you start purposely lifting lighter in the gym, and you start to lose muscle, it's going to become more challenging to lose fat. So that doesn't make sense. Okay. So never purposely lighten the weights in the gym unless you yourself are dealing with an injury or perhaps a physical limitation, or maybe you're going into the gym and you know you're just overly exhausted that day and you know you're not going to be going for a PR, personal record, or maybe you don't have a spotter. So you might have to go a little bit lighter that day. That's fine. But don't purposely go in the gym thinking, well, I need to burn fat. So I'm going to go up to 25, 30 reps and decrease my weight because all that's going to happen is you're going to lose muscle. Okay. So not a good idea. All right. Next question. Nick, I've been doing an hour of cardio every day to get lean, but now I'm worried I might be losing muscle. How much cardio is too much? So there's not an exact number I can give you there. Okay. It's not some magical number and saying, well, 60 minutes is too much. 45 is the perfect number for you. Not true. I've never, ever been a trainer out there that says doing too much cardio is going to burn muscle because I don't believe in that at all. I will tell you this though. If you are implementing more cardio into your program, which you are, you're doing an hour a day, that's a lot of cardio. You want to make sure that you're fueling your body properly with enough protein. Okay, so if you're starving your body of protein, you're going to start losing muscle because your body will go into somewhat of a catabolic state. All right. So it's important that if you are someone who is trying to get leaner and you're incorporating more cardio like you are, and you're doing 60 minutes, sometimes even 90 minutes for people who are preparing for a certain event, you want to make sure the protein levels are high. Okay. You also want to make sure that you don't drop your carbohydrates too low because don't forget, you still need to perform. And I've seen this before with people who are dieting really hard, whether they're getting ready for a wedding or whether they're getting ready for like a beach vacation or a bodybuilding show. And they go into these severe caloric deficits. They start dropping their macronutrients ridiculously low, bringing their carbs down to like 30 carbs a day, 20 carbs a day, no carbs a day. And then they can barely perform in the gym. They can barely do their cardio. Well, that doesn't make sense. You still want to make sure that you can do cardio at a relatively, intense pace. Like if you're doing a speed walk on a treadmill, you should be doing at least 4 miles an hour walk, right? That should be pretty easy for most people. But if you're someone who's just barely hanging on and you're doing like 2.5, maybe 3 miles an hour on the treadmill and you're lifting really light and you're taking like, 2, 3 minutes rest periods in between sets, there's a good chance that your calories are too low. All right. So you don't want to drop your calories too low in order to get lean. All right. So it's not that doing too much cardio is going to allow you to lose muscle. It's doing too much cardio, exerting too much energy all day long while not fueling your body properly enough with the right amount of proteins and carbohydrates and fats. That's going to cause you to lose muscle. That's going to cause you to go into a catabolic state. So anytime I'm putting someone on a prep where they're incorporating more cardio, their protein goes up. All right. Sometimes even their carbohydrates go up. If they're losing weight too quickly, I'll bump up their carbs a little bit. I'll probably keep the cardio the same. Okay, because I actually think cardio is actually very good for overall heart health. And I do think that if you are trying to get leaner, cardio can be a great tool to utilize for your benefits. But as I've always said, though, it's a mistake to rely on cardio to burn fat. It should just be used as a tool. okay? But you shouldn't rely on it because if you rely on it to burn fat, you're always going to have to rely on it to burn fat. So it's better to, again, lift heavier in the gym, build a physique that has muscle so that you don't have to continuously do cardio after cardio sessions every day for the rest of your life in order to stay lean, okay? You could take your cardio down to 30 minutes once you hit your goal. You can even take your cardio down to 20 minutes, 2, 3 times a week once you hit your goal, and still maintain that level of physique as long as you are continuing to train in the gym with weights and continuing to keep the muscle mass that you've built over the years of training with weights. All right. Okay. Nick, I feel like I eat pretty clean, but the scale isn't moving. Do I actually need to start tracking macros? Yes. I talked about this last week. Just because you eat clean does not necessarily mean that you are going to lose weight. All right. Because portions still count for portions. So if you're having, for example, let's say rice and chicken, and you're having 2 cups of white rice and you're having 12 ounces of chicken, well, chances are you probably don't need that much rice and you probably don't need that much chicken. So those additional calories are not going to be stored as muscle. They're going to be stored as body fat. All right. So you want to make sure that even if you are someone who follows a clean diet, that you're still practicing proper portion control. And to this day, even though I no longer compete, to this day, I still use a food scale. I still weigh out my proteins. I still measure out my carbs. Okay. I still weigh out or measure my fats depending on what I'm having, if it's avocado, eggs, or peanut butter. Okay. So the reason I do that is so that I can keep a watchful eye on my diet. So whether I'm trying to build muscle, lose fat, or just maintain my current condition, I know where to make those changes once I decide maybe my goal shifts. Maybe I decide, hey, you know what? I want to lose 10 pounds, but I know exactly what I need to do because I'm practicing proper portion control. Oh, I'm having 400 grams of carbs a day. Let's take the carbs down to 300. Let's bring the protein up to, let's say I'm having 200. Let's bring the protein to 250. And let's bring the fats from maybe 75 down to 50. Okay. And rotate accordingly. But if I'm not practicing proper portion control, it can be very difficult to be like, well, where do I make the changes? I don't know, right? So remember, just because you are eating clean per se does not necessarily mean that you're going to be able to continuously lose body fat. Okay. In fact, I would make the argument that if you're not practicing proper portion control, there will be a point where you hit a plateau with your weight loss. Absolutely. Okay. And you won't know where to make those changes because you haven't been doing your homework and you haven't been keeping record of what you've been eating. Like you might know the foods you've been eating, but if you're not measuring your rice and you're just eyeballing it, I can't help you. I don't know if you're having half a cup of rice, 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of rice, 3 cups of rice. I have no idea. Right. So whenever I'm working with someone who's not practicing portion control, I say, well, it's going to take like 2 or 3 weeks for me to understand your body because I'm going to put you on a diet and I'm going to put out the portions that I think are necessary based on the information you're providing me as far as your goal, whether it's weight gain or weight loss, your activity level, how many times you're in the gym, your level of fitness, your experience in the gym. So all these factors I take into consideration when designing a nutritional plan for somebody. And that's when I plug in your macros and I make changes along the way. But I never just tell someone to eyeball it because honestly, it's so difficult to make changes to your physique if you don't have a record of what you're doing in the kitchen, period. Okay. Nick, how much protein do I really need to build muscle while trying to lose fat? I hear completely different numbers everywhere. Yeah, so good rule of thumb I use for beginners, let's say. Anyone who's a beginner with me who starts working out for the first time, I get a lot of people who are new to the gym. They're not very well versed in as far as when it comes to exercise science. They don't really understand dietary nutrition, so I keep things very simple for them. I say, okay, for every pound of body weight you are, and I'm not just saying lean body weight, I'm saying body weight as a whole. So let's say I'm working with someone who's 180 pounds. I say, I want you to have 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight you weigh. So I want you to have 180 grams of protein. That's what I usually recommend to beginners. Okay. And then when someone is more, let's say, intermediate, they've been training now for 6 months to a year. What I'll typically do then, I'll take that same weight and I'll say, okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to go by 1.5. So I want you to have 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. All right. So now if you're 200 pounds, you're going to take that number, you're going to times it by 1.5, and that's the amount of protein I want you to have. And then once you become more of an advanced lifter, let's say now you're training for bodybuilding shows, you're in the gym 5, 6 days a week, you've got a good like year, year and a half, possibly 2 years under your belt of regular training. And I mean like training in the gym daily, 5, 6 days a week, 1 day off a week. All right. So you're that person. Okay. You've built a lot of muscle. You're carrying a good, you're proud of your physique. You got some solid, lean, dense muscle. Then and only then do I recommend people take their body weight and times it by two. Okay, so you're having 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. The reason I do that with advanced lifters is because chances are, if you've been training consistently for a year and a half, 2 years, following a clean diet, you're carrying a lot of muscle and your body fat levels are most likely quite low. So I'm not too worried about your body weight because someone like that who's fairly lean, they're probably going to be around maybe 205, 210 pounds if you're a guy, maybe about 140, 150 pounds if you're a girl. So I feel pretty confident giving them 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight because that's not too much protein. What I would not recommend, and I see a lot of these so-called gurus out there who tell people, you got to consume tons of protein. So I see diets that have 400 grams of protein for someone that's 120 pounds. I'm like, are you crazy? Do you know how much damage that's going to do to your kidneys, to your liver, to your organs? It's very hard for the body, the kidneys especially, to process that much protein. Okay. So your body doesn't eat it. All right. So if you stick to those numbers, in my opinion, you can't go wrong. You're going to put on muscle. Obviously, you can make minor adjustments that, as you see fit, but those are the general numbers that I recommend for beginner versus intermediate versus advanced. All right. Okay. Nick, I only have about 45 minutes to train after work. What should I focus on if my goal is building muscle, but also getting lean? Train with weights. Pretty simple. Okay. Again, if you have 45 minutes, that's more than enough time to get in a great resistance training workout. I talk about how my resistance training workouts are 45, 50 minutes max. That's it. Okay. And I move. So the trick here is to move. The trick is to not sit in between sets, scrolling Instagram, looking at TikTok videos. The trick is to move. So you want to keep your rest periods between 45 seconds, maybe 90 seconds max between sets. If you have the luxury of training at a private training facility, my recommendation is try to throw in some supersets, some circuit training, add in some drop sets. So really take that workout to failure. Okay. Try your best to exhaust your muscles to the best of your ability. Because when you train intensely, you're going to build muscle and you're going to lose body fat as long as your diet's in check as well. Obviously, you have to make sure your diet's dialed in. But if you're training lackluster and your phone is constantly making appearances and you're constantly looking at your phone in between sets, you're not going to change. I see so many people in the gym who spend more time on their phone than actually lifting the damn weights. And then they wonder why their physique looks the same after 12 months of training. Okay. Because you're not training. You're in the gym on your phone. And there's that saying that says, well, there's no such thing as a bad workout. And I always say that's not true. There's a lot of bad workouts, and I see them all the time. All right. So, in my opinion, if you're someone who goes to the gym and you spend half your time on your phone and you're resting far too long between sets and you don't have a game plan, you might as well not even go to the gym because you are wasting your time. And that is the brutal truth that people don't want to hear, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. Okay. I believe that if you are that person, don't even bother going to the gym because you are wasting your time. Like, go enjoy your time somewhere else. Go look at your phone in your comfort of your own home, okay? Or on the toilet like the rest of us. So don't do it in the gym. Focus on what you can do in the gym with that 45 minutes. Don't worry that it's only 45 minutes. I always say this too. I'm like, if someone is training in the gym with weights for more than an hour, in my opinion, they're not training nearly intense enough. There's a lot of people out there that say they're in the gym for 2, 3 hours, but they're not training. They're on their phone, they're talking to other gym members, they're taking selfies, they're not training. Okay. If you're training with the utmost amount of intensity, you want to leave after 40, 45 minutes. You talk to any of my clients that train with me in the gym, they'll tell you after like 40, maybe 50 minutes, they're done. Those last 10 minutes are a struggle, okay? Because we push it to absolute failure. And that's how you're going to create results with your health and your physique. All right. Okay. Nick, I've been dieting for a few weeks and the scale is dropping, but how do I know if I'm losing fat or just losing muscle? Best indicator is if your strength is going down in the gym. If your strength is going down in the gym, that's a sign that you are losing muscle. All right. I'll go back to actually 2014. I was preparing for a show once, and I noticed that my strength was going down quite quickly in the gym. Like every workout was getting worse and worse. I was getting leaner, but every workout was getting worse. I was like one workout I'd be squatting 315. The following week I'd be struggling with 225. All right. So what was happening was the weight I was losing, which was on average like a pound a day, was primarily muscle. I was losing fat for sure, and I was losing some water, but I was losing primarily muscle. And back in 2014, I understood dietary nutrition, but I didn't understand it to the extent that I understand now. So fast track 12 years later, and what I've learned is that when I'm training, whether I'm training for a show or whether I'm just trying to get leaner myself and diet, I don't like to use the word diet, but I'm trying to restrict my calories a little bit, lower my macronutrients. I have to make sure that goes back to that first question that I implement a strategy that's going to allow me to preserve and potentially even build muscle when I'm dieting, which can be done. All right. So it's necessary to look at your overall macronutrient intake and also when you plug those macros in. Like for me, whenever I'm dieting per se, what I'll typically do is I'll surround my workout with carbohydrates. So my pre-workout will have some carbs and my post-workout will have some carbs. As the day goes on, let's say I train at like 5 o'clock in the morning. As the day goes on, I don't need as much carbs because now my day's winding down. Like I still need carbohydrates for me to get through my day for energy levels, but what I'll typically start to do is decrease my carbs and increase my fats so that my insulin levels are not spiking, my blood sugar levels are not dropping, and so I feel like this instead of going like this. But that's from years and years of practice, trial and error, working with other coaches. So I've learned a strategy that works for myself and for the clients I work with online when I put them on a nutritional plan that's going to help them perform better in the gym while making sure that they're preserving the muscle that they've worked so hard to build. All right. So the best indicator is if you think you're losing muscle, monitor your strength in the gym. If your strength is going down, and I don't just mean one workout, because sometimes, you don't have the best workouts. There's times I go to the gym and I'm just weaker. But if it's happening on a consistent basis, like every day you start to notice, or every second day you start to notice that certain lifts that you used to be able to lift, let's say you used to be able to curl 30-pound dumbbells and now you're struggling to curl 25 or 20-pound dumbbells, that's a good indicator that you're starting to lose muscle. So you're going to have to look at your diet. And I don't do your diet, so I don't know what you'd have to increase. It might be carbs, it might be fats, it might be protein. You might have to rotate your macronutrients, but it's going to be something. There's going to be some type of red flag in there that a good knowledgeable coach is going to know where to make those changes in order to make sure that you're just losing fat and you're not losing muscle. All right. Because as I've said in the past, anyone can lose weight. Losing weight, easy. But losing fat while building and preserving muscle, completely different game. All right. Completely different league. We're not dealing with amateur anymore. We're dealing with professional. So you have to put together a strategy that's going to complement your nutritional plan and your training program. That's also going to show in your physique and your performance in the gym. All right. Okay. Nick, I train hard and eat pretty well, but I still can't lose the fat around my lower stomach. I'm a man who's in his 30s. What am I probably doing wrong? So, men in general, what you notice for a lot of guys, and I include myself in this, when we put on fat, we typically put it on our midsection. Yeah, there's a few guys that put it on in their lower half, but most men typically put on weight in what we call the love handles, the lower back, and the spare tire, right? The reason for that is that's where we carry as men a lot of our estrogen levels. So our fat cells are distributed more throughout the abdominal region. Very rarely do you see men putting fat on in their biceps, their triceps, their delts, their pecs. I mean, it does happen, right? You see some guys kind of with breast tissue, right? Or gynecomastia, all these things. So you have to be careful with how you diet, but your genetics are your genetics. So if you're predisposed to put on fat in your midsection, that's your genetics. There's nothing you can do about that. But what you can do is ensure that again your diet's dialed in and your training is perfect. So, for example, if I work with someone online and they're sending me progress photos, man or woman, I can pretty much tell after 2 or 3 weeks of getting those progress photos where this person is going to struggle to lose the fat. But I always tell them, like, you know what? It looks like if I'm working with a woman and I notice their glutes hold a lot of fat or they have cellulite, I'm like, you're losing fat from your midsection very quickly, but your glutes are going to be the hardest. However, if you, as long as you continue the plan, you will eventually lose fat from those glutes. Okay, because there's going to be nowhere else for it to go. So, for example, if you're someone who loses fat first from your face, when I used to diet, I'd always lose fat right away from my face. Okay, it'd be the first place to go. After that, though, my face is lean. So where's it going to attack? Is it going to attack my chest? Maybe I have a little bit of fat in my chest, but not much. Is it going to attack my legs? So I got no fat in my legs, no fat in my butt. My fat was more in my lower back. Okay. And that was always the last place for it to go. So what I would just do is trust the process. So as long as you continue to diet, as long as you continue to train, as long as you continue to make the revisions that are necessary to both your diet and your training program, you will lose the fat from the areas that you find the most challenging, which in your case is going to be the lower midsection. And you're not alone like that. I have a lot of men I work with, and that's in most cases the last place for it to go for guys, but it does go. Okay. Because again, as I said, if you're losing fat from your face, from other areas of your body, it eventually will come from that lower midsection. It's going to come. Okay. You just have to stay patient and you have to stay consistent. And I've talked about the importance of being consistent with the diet and the training, which I feel most people lack that consistency. They give up too early. But there also, one more thing I should add to that is they're not patient. This is a process. Okay. It's not something that just happens overnight. Like, yeah, sure, you can take Ozempic and you can starve yourself and you'll probably see results within 3 or 4 weeks. However, are those results sustainable? All right. So if you want to sustain the results that you achieve, you have to be patient. You have to be consistent. So stay on track with the diet, keep plugging away, uh, keep working hard as you can in the gym, making sure that you are practicing proper portion control in the kitchen. And you will notice that the fat will come off that midsection. It will, I promise you. But there's no magic secret. There's no magic pill. I mean, yeah, there's tons of magic pills. I'm sure that people will tell you. You can take, as I said, Ozempic, you can take Wegovy, you can take clenbuterol, you can take Cytomel. However, can you take those drugs for the remainder of your life? Do you want to take those drugs for the remainder of your life? If the answer is no, then that's not going to work. That's not a long-term strategy. All right. So you have to work on your eating habits. You have to make sure that you're in the gym consistently, plug the two in together, and that's how you're going to get the results. It will come. Be patient and be consistent. All right. Okay. Last question. Nick, if someone wants to get really lean, what's the biggest mistake you see people making in the gym or with their diet? I touched on a question that was similar to this a few weeks ago. And what I talked about is people try to do too much too soon. So they get really motivated. Like, if, for example, if you're training for a bodybuilding competition, it's your first competition, you might get really motivated, say, I'm going to look fantastic. I'm going to get lean. I'm going to get ripped, and I'm going to do this quickly. So what they do is they go from 0 to 100 overnight. So instead of starting off with, say there was someone that was doing no cardio, instead of just starting off with maybe 30 minutes of cardio, they'll start off with an hour of cardio. And instead of maybe they were doing, let's say, 300 grams of carbs a day, now all of a sudden they're going to do 100 grams of carbs a day. Well, maybe those first 2 or 3 days, you're going to feel highly motivated. You're going to see the scale start to go down. And you might still have some energy because, yeah, you still have some body fat. And don't forget, too, you've only been on this diet for maybe 2 or 3 days. But as 2 or 3 days turn into 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to start to feel the effects of going too low on your calories and too much on your training. Okay, and you're going to hit a plateau. You're going to feel lethargic. You're going to feel grumpy, irritable. You're not going to sleep well. You're not going to recover well. And now you hit this plateau. And because you've been training too much and eating too little, you don't know what to do. The only answer would be, do I eat less, even more, or do I do more? And as you know, you're going to keep hitting a plateau if you keep following that formula. So I always tell people you want to work smarter, not harder. If I'm someone who's trying to go from 20% body fat to 10% body fat, if I'm that person that's doing no cardio, I'm going to start off with 20 minutes of cardio. And I'm going to do that for week one. I might lose 1 pound. That's great. That's fine because I know that 1 pound that I'm losing is mostly fat. Some of it water, sure. Is any of it muscle? No, because I'm making sure my diet's in check. Week two, I might bump that cardio up to 25 minutes. Or maybe I'll take my 300 grams of carbs that I'm consuming and I'll bring them down to 275. But I won't drastically just drop them down to 100 or to 50. Okay, that doesn't make sense because I always compare it to landing a plane. You don't nosedive it. Do it very smooth. Okay, you let your body adjust. And that's what I've done for every weight loss strategy I've ever implemented, whether it's with myself or whether it's with a client. I always make sure that I'm doing things slowly. Okay, so I give myself lots of time. I'm in no rush because I'm looking at this as a long-term process to sustain long-term results. So I'm in no rush. If I say, I want to get down to 10% body fat, but I want to maintain that for the rest of my life. So I need to change my habits. And that all comes from up here. Okay. So if I can change someone's psyche around food and get them practicing portion control, maybe they never practiced portion control in their life. I'm like, you know what? Now I want you to weigh out your proteins. I want you to measure out your carbs. That right there, if they're doing that for a month, that's a win because now I've changed that habit of just grabbing food, grabbing snacks. Now let's get you in the habit of preparing those meals ahead of time. Wow, instead of like measuring out each meal, now you've measured out maybe 5 or 6 meals. Now you've measured out maybe 10 or 15 meals. Now you're freezing your meals and then you can heat them up the next day. So you have a whole bunch of meals for the week. You're meal prepping, right? So it's about making good habits. And if you turn good habits that you practice excuse me. If you turn good habits that you've been practicing on a daily basis into weekly habits, monthly habits, yearly habits, you're going to sustain the results that you've been trying to achieve with your physique for life. All right. So to answer that question, and I still believe that most people try to do too much too soon. And what happens when you do that, you fall victim to plateaus. And when you fall victim to plateaus and they keep coming up, of course, everyone hits a plateau. I hit a plateau, but because I know how to troubleshoot past that plateau and because I'm keeping as much ammunition as I can, I know, okay, well, maybe instead of dropping my calories are already too low. Let's increase the cardio. Oh, my cardio is already too high. So maybe I can actually drop my carbohydrates. Or maybe I need to make rotations, right? So I know what to do. But if I start doing too much too soon and I constantly hit plateaus, I'm going to run out of ammunition at some point. So I'll hit a wall. And when I hit a wall and that plateau that I've hit, that's been maybe my weight's been stalled at a certain weight for on a scale for 1 week, that turns into 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Now I'm getting frustrated. Nothing I'm doing is working. I'm tired. I just want that slice of cake. I just want that muffin. You know what? I do want that slice of pizza, whatever it is. Now it's easier to give in to temptation or short-term gratification because whatever you're doing in the gym and the diet's no longer working. So the hell with this. And that's when people fall off track. So don't do too much too soon. Okay. I promise you that's going to backfire in your face. Always go by the concept of working smarter, not harder. That's going to equate to better results with your physique, your health, and your performance in the gym. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, March the 16th. As a reminder, if you do have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your workout program, supplements you're currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.